Hello and welcome back to 10 Thoughts with Kobe and Kien. It has been a while, my friend, but we've got this action-packed weekend with leading up into finals. There's so much going on with the LCS tailgate and everything. I know you did TFT World Championship is actually live right now as well. So how have you been?
I've been doing well. I've been playing maybe a little too much TFT, but
Uh-huh.
made the long grind all the way up to close to the top of the ladder. So it's been a productive couple weeks, even if I haven't been podcasting. Well, what about you? I know last time I talked to you, you were kind of grinding, getting close to Masters. You were like a game away.
Oh, I was one game away from popping my series and I went on a loss streak. Oh, yeah. All right, let's talk about some other stuff then. Work instead. Yeah, solo queue is a fickle fickle thing. But I mean, this weekend, I've been working recently trying to revive the Teamfight Breakdown series.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to use the same branding, so I've got one coming out that is breaking down a team fight of Cloud9 TSM from a regular season game
Yeah.
and trying to incorporate Sun Tzu principles from Art of War. So doing an angle like that. So I'm super excited for that. Hopefully it is going to be ready for the Saturday game for TSM versus Team Liquid, because that would be, most pertinent to the teams that are playing. But just finished the dive in this or that as well, both coming out. So I'm super excited for this weekend. We've got so much leading up to it.
Content machine Kobe himself, always out there getting the work and the grind done. I'm super excited to hear that the team fight tactics or team fight break. I don't know what if you called it team fight
You have team fight
tactics.
tactics on your
Yeah.
mind. Your
But
whole world has been.
you could call it team fight tactics, but I'm excited to see it come out because I think one of the nuances, it's during the live cast, it can be difficult to I think really dive as much as you would
Yeah.
like to into a team fight, and it's always like little things that people miss. Be like one missed serial queue can swing the entire fight the other way. It's just like little things like that, right? And I think
Yeah.
so it'll be exciting to see for sure.
When you're casting, it always feels like you can just talk the whole time, but you have to give time to your co-caster as well. And obviously, there's new action coming up, so
Yeah.
you can delve too deep into some of those topics.
I can almost hear the disappointment sometimes when you're revving up and getting to make a big point, and then your co-caster, your color caster is like, "Oh, wait, a fight's about to break out." So
We've got new breaking information. A new team fight has started.
yeah, which is it makes me think about LPL games a lot, where it's like action to action to action. It's like I can't even imagine trying to get an actual analytical point into some of those games.
I really love action-packed games too, just because those are the types that I enjoy watching the most, even though you have less time talking about little nuances. But I'm super excited to cast LPL games with the Worlds coming up. I kind of like that you breached that subject because we've been watching a bunch of VODs preparing for like group draw show and stuff like that. And it is really fun to watch. It makes me really miss how when Cloud9 were dominating in the beginning of the year, it was like they were leading the way, trying to make more teams play, super aggressive and play those, action-packed styles as well. And we kind of had a resurgence of some of the slower teams. But I think with this latest iteration of the playoffs, TSM played very offensively, very quickly, and FlyQuest has a good dash of that as well with Santorin. Um, Creating so much action. He is, highest kills and assists pre-15 for any jungler in the LCS, and I think it was like top 3 for the world.
Hyping up any team.
So
This is actually a really good segue into what I kind of want to begin with today, which is like a more focused discussion on play styles. But I want to begin with starting with the jungle. And I think jungle kind of dictates a lot of how teams will operate in the beginning. I just want to ask, did you have a chance to see the Ning race that China has, the entire nation of China has engulfed
I
themselves
had
in?
not seen it. You mentioned it in the story doc, and I was like, what is the Ning meme? Because I always associate this player with like coin flips and stuff, but yeah, the Ning race is actually really funny after looking it up, and a completely different thing to associate with him with.
Yeah, so just for context, what has happened is IG has unfortunately been eliminated from Worlds. They've had a very up and down year. If you haven't watched, it's basically rookie 1v9ing or they lose. Like Rookie maybe is the best player in the world at the moment, and he is not going to Worlds because his team has just been a disaster. And so one of the things that happened was Ning had a really slow clear time on Lee Sin. Like I don't know if it's abysmally slow. I don't play jungle, so I don't know if you had a chance to even test your own Ning race. But basically, what happened is the entire community decided, hey, your first clear was so bad, we can actually do it better. So they created a nationwide race to replicate Ning's clear, which is Lee Sin. You have to do it in this order. On Lee Sin, you start blue, Gromp, Wolves, Raptors, and then the red buff is like optional. So they were keeping track of timing up to Raptor and also up to red buff. And so Ning's speed, I think, was 3 minutes and 6 seconds to hit the Raptor camp. And then, no, it was 2 minutes, 57 seconds to hit Raptor camp. And then somebody actually did it 11 seconds faster. I think SOFM got it at like 2:46, something like that. And then somebody else actually cleared to red buff 15 seconds faster than Ning did. Kobe, how much is 15 seconds worth early game on that first clear?
I mean, okay, so I always think of timings in League of Legends in terms of 30-second blocks, because 30-second blocks are each minion wave. And that's how you have to work with all of your lane partners. You know, my mid laner is not coming to Scuttle Crab if there's, you know, a cannon about to die or something like that. So 15 seconds on your first clear as a deviation with Lee Sin, the most played champion in the jungle for the history of League of Legends, is actually, it's just insane. And let me just take a moment after, you know, explaining that Ning race meme to step back and have people really think about what this means. Like, this blew up into such a meme. Imagine you are a professional player and the entire world is looking at your jungle clear and they're just like, what is this? What is happening here? And literally every person, all of the other pro players are like, that's trash. I can do better. They make their own videos. They're posting them. And then everybody in solo queue is also doing the same thing and posting them. And you're sitting there as like, wow, the entire all however many servers China has now, they had like 12 shards or something last time we were there, are all looking at just like a regular blue to red clear as this is now a Ning challenge.
Yeah,
that to me is just crazy, and that must put like you know some sort of that's some sort of feel in there. I have to feel like he was talking a lot to his lane mates or something, or just wasn't paying attention, because you can definitely go on autopilot when you're clearing. One of the big things to me when I'm always trying to get better timings on jungle clearings, because I like spending a lot of time on that sort of things, because I can improve my like level 1 to 4 stuff really easily, because you do that every single game. And a lot of it there's a lot of PvE in it and a lot of planning in it. One of the big things, you can save a lot of time by kiting the patience of these camps into the red towards the other camps. So that's one of the biggest things that new players or autofilled junglers are really scared of doing, because if the patience goes red, you're like, oh shit, is he gonna reset? And it's the rules that the jungle monsters play by are very predictable. And if you've done jungle for a long time, you become more comfortable and you're like, okay, it's red now. Yes, you know, I have time to, you know, execute it or do whatever as you're leashing it to the other one. But I definitely see a lot of panic with new junglers. And that's one of the things, being able to attack, move backwards and get it closer to where your next camp is. The travel time between camps is where you can make up a lot of the ground. Whereas like, this is Lee Sin, you're not squeezing out a bunch of extra DPS once you're on the camp. Like there's no real magic or surprise there, because another part of your Ning meme test is that they all had to use the same runes, same setup, like everything has to be the same. It's literally just this recreation test. So that's why it's just 11 seconds difference is insane.
I mean, it's huge, right? Like 11 seconds is the difference between maybe you get to the scuttle first. Maybe you're the first one up top lane to sit in the tri bush.
I could
Maybe
get a recall off, buy
oh,
all
recall.
my items, and get almost out of base by
Yeah.
then. Like that, it's.
I mean, it's terrible. Like, I mean, it's terrible. There's a reason that he got flamed hard for it, right? It's one of those things where, like, especially during a cast, you might not even notice that he's 11 seconds behind his regular clear
I mean,
time.
observers are over here, so you're watching this and all this different types of things.
Yeah. I would actually like to figure out how, like, who is the one that, like, it's got to be like the equivalent of their like Twitter analysts. Like somebody just went online and said, wait a second, his clear time was 11 seconds slower. And then from there, it just kind of exploded into this big thing. But like for somebody to actually notice that and then to blow it up into this huge thing is a
I
wild.
think it's cool.
Have you ever had anything even remotely close to this where like the community kind of memed you hard for either something? Because I was trying to think, I was like, I don't think you specifically have ever been memed particularly hard for something. I don't know.
No, the only thing that comes to mind is way back when I was actually playing. I was on CLG and we did the WCG in 2010, and we were in the match before the finals. I got outsmited at a Baron. I missed a smite, and and they stole it, and like we lost one of the matches, and I just got memed on it super hard. This is before the like Saint Vicious meme for missing smites all the time. I was like the original person that people always memed on for missing smites because this was such a big one, and we ended up losing the game because of it. And I felt so bad. I made this public apology on the forums because of it. I think that might be the closest thing, but yeah.
I mean,
it's so long ago.
That's a kind of memory. I feel like 30 years from now, you'll probably still like if somebody mentioned it.
Yeah, those times playing are still some of the most memorable things to me. I mean, I'm not sure, how making memories works too in depth, but I have a lot of very vivid ones from those times, whether it was highs or lows. Like I still remember when the exact moment when we won, getting up on stage, getting a gold medal handed by Mark Merrill to us, getting our giant check, like even the walk up to like the after party on the rooftop, like those types of things are why when people are like, oh, would you ever be a player? Again, you're like, oh, you remember those things. And I'm like, yeah, but also I'm terrible and I have not been good enough to do that in a long time. So that's super out of reach. But then, and then the coaching things come in and you're like, well, you get a little competitive, you get that competitive juice there without having to actually be a player.
Yeah, I get my competitive juice from playing solo.
I mean, you're a top 10 TFT player, like every single set that you've played, right?
I could probably go pro in TFT if I had more confidence in the life of a professional teamfight tactics player. Unfortunately, I do like stability. I do like what I do. I like talking to you. I like watching LCS games. I like that. But but the main reason I wanted to bring up this Ning thing was you made a point on the dive this week about how Spica actually played 4 different junglers in the set against Cloud9, which was Graves, Lee Sin, Evelyn, and Skarner. And maybe a couple of those have similar play styles to each other, but it's 4 different champions. At least a couple of them, like Evelyn and Skarner, very different types of champions. I thought that was really interesting, and it kind of ties into the bigger thing I wanted to talk about this week, which is right now there's a really neat, I think, macro, and this was a this or that slide. If you haven't had a chance to watch this or that slide, there's a kind of a neat macro decision thing where some teams are right now opting into a play style in a draft where they just give up the first 2 dragons and they don't contest until the 3rd one. And the idea is instead of contesting for the first 2 dragons, they will slam a Rift Herald top lane, they'll dive top lane, and they'll try and secure turret plates and farm and gold and counter jungling elsewhere on the map, while the other team spends, it's always a good 20-30 seconds at least setting up and then taking the dragon. And so you can get a lot of gold. And so after 2 dragons, sometimes this ends up being like 1,000, 2,000 gold that you have an advantage up on the third Drake. And of course, the other team then is like, well, I guess we'll just take the first two dragons, and then if you somehow screw up on the third one, we're on soul point. And so I thought this has been one of the more personally interesting macro things to me, and I was kind of curious to hear you talk a little bit more about one, how Spica's jungle pool, like I'm just kind of curious when we look at the early game, like how fast do you know if a team is gonna kind of gravitate towards dragon control early?
This is one of the things that I think we have talked about maybe the most this year is teams, because all these teams have been focused, and rightfully so, on dragons and on soul, because dragon soul is super powerful. But there are a lot of cases where you have these two compositions. One of them clearly, and like 90% of the time, unless something insanely crazy goes wrong in the early game, should have a huge advantage in a fight that early in the game. So like
Mm-hmm.
you have a bunch of early priority in lanes, you have really strong matchups for a lot of your champions, your jungle matchup is super strong, and yet we see teams be like, oh no, they're starting the dragon. That's bad. We don't want them to stack all these dragons, right? And you're like, okay, at the most basic level, yeah, them getting things is bad. But like, if you're not in a position, if you are not equipped to be able to fight them off that, then you should always trade on the other side of the map from where they're committing to. And I love the teams that do this even more proactively. And watching some of the LPL VODs,
Yes.
I think V5, who actually got eliminated, so I was kind of sad they wouldn't show up. But I think they did this in several of the VODs that I watched, where they would commit super hard to the top side, even preempting this.
Yeah.
So they could try and get as much possible gold out of another side of the map that you knew your opponents were going to focus on sacking dragons, and on the bottom side you can get some kills on top side. If you get kills up there first and your top laners already working on turret plates, if they already take a turret plate off by themselves, and then you're able to have your jungler up there get the rift hailed, so often you can actually just power that through and take the entire turret. You get first turret bonus, you get all the turret plates up there, and the LPL, they run a bunch of carry top laners,
Yeah.
so you can have a crazy mid game. Renekton is something that has gotten a lot of controversy as far as power and pick ban and all that type of stuff. But if you bolster that early game with like this juiced amount of money, the itemization for bruisers right now is actually so good with how powerful Death Stance is. Black Cleaver, Sterix, all these types of things can be rolled into a giant mid game, and you get one big teleport flank off on the opponent team, and like you can also use this giant influx of gold to make like, oh, the weakened individual bonuses that you actually get for singular dragons is fairly minuscule for what it's going to mean for your mid game team fights.
Yes.
That was one of the changes with souls, right? The
Yeah.
individual dragons are a little bit weaker.
Yeah, I was talking to Emily Rand about this, and for those of you who don't know, she's kind of one of the foremost experts on the LPL, and that she watches literally every LPL game among non-Chinese players and fans, especially. And one of the things she mentioned to me was that she thinks NA teams focus on the dragons, like the first two dragons, way more than LPL teams. And you'll see if you look at drafts, like LPL teams will first rotation the Renekton, as you mentioned, a lot more. And it's something that might, I don't know if biting in the ass is the right thing here, but I do. It's a question of, this is a very distinct playstyle difference. When you mentioned like a V5 who's like, and they'll decide like in the draft when they're drafting, okay, we're just gonna give up the first couple dragons. If you lose, because if you can win that third dragon fight, that sometimes snowballs. You lose mid turret off of it. You know, get a herald. It's around the 18-20 minute mark usually when the third dragon comes up. If you lose that fight, usually that means you end up losing the fourth fight, and if you lose the fourth fight, that can sometimes be Baron. It's like a huge PowerPoint in the game, right?
Yeah, there's so many domino effects when we go through like these theory crafted game states too,
Mm-hmm.
because imagine you are the team that's like, all right, we're gonna give up the first two dragons for this extra gold up there. And this is one of the things when you look at statistics, just using them as to inform rather than to decide, the actual correlations versus causation. If you're the team, let's say, all right, our whole early game was based around we're getting more gold off top side. We've got our 1 to 2K gold lead, let's say. They have 2 dragons now that they've been able to stack up because we focused our resources on the other side while they're getting these dragons, to get our 1 to 2K gold lead. If you did all that and you lose your team fight with your gold lead, yeah, you're screwed. Like you're screwed. Because of what this means, just the ramifications of your team playing that team fight with that advantage and losing it. It's very unlikely that you'll be able to win a consecutive team fight after that when the other team has just got a bunch of gold off you from winning the team fight, so they equalize that and then got the dragon. Like that's just it means so much, that one decision point. I
Yeah.
like when it kind of builds to stuff like that, and you get the make or break between something that's early game focused and something that's stalling.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
to try and cut them off later.
It's just a ton of tension, right? I was looking at this, and I'm going to end up pulling up just a random game from last weekend, and we're just going to look. I'm curious just to look at the draft and say, like, just based on draft, are you able to just tell, well, one, which team should kind of lean that way, or is it kind of a 50-50?
You'll generally have like, okay, this one should be advantaged, and then yes, level ones and jungle routes and all that stuff comes in.
So, do you think it's tied more to? So when I'm thinking of dragon control, I think a lot of people thinking of dragon control, they'll look at the jungle matchup and say, okay, whoever's stronger early game jungler obviously has more dragon control. Is that true, or is it more tied to like lanes, like?
I'm a jungler. I'm going my bottom lane and mid lane. Are they pushing? That is the key factor. Like, all right, maybe you are Graves into Volibear or something like that, but if your bottom lane's pushing super hard, or even one of the bottom lanes that takes teleports and your opponents don't have teleport for their bottom lane, and they're on their 6-minute BF timing recall, and you can take a dragon if you start a dragon on a recall from the bottom lane, you can get it before they get back. Likewise, mid lane pushing is huge for that.
Mm-hmm.
And those things also play into the scuttle crab control, which is basically like baby dragon fights, where you're trying to use your lanes to control the scuttle crabs leading up to that point.
Yeah, and of course, there's always a wrench thrown into it. Like if, for example, you have the better early game team, but then your mid laner dies 22 seconds before the dragon spawns in a 1v1, then yeah. But in a world where random picks aren't happening, I'm just gonna pull up a random draft here from. Let's go. So game 3 of Cloud9 versus TSM. I'm gonna read off the comps real quick, and so this ended up being a game TSM won, and so Cloud9 has Set, Rek'Sai, Silas, Ezreal, and Bard. And then TSM has Lucian, Evelyn, Twisted Fate, Senna, and Rakan. Just looking at the draft, as let's say, there's always that last 40 seconds as a coach after the teams have been locked in. If you're a coach, and let's say you're TSM's coach here, and talking about this early dragon control is kind of an important thing. Are you looking to secure the first couple drakes with this? Like, because it's very difficult, I think, for most people to tell.
The first thing that pops out in that is the top lane matchup. Because TSM put a lot of emphasis on this Lucian. It's super good, lane bully early on with the buffs that he got. Flat damage on piercing light. So I'm looking at trying to make sure that this Rek'Sai does not kill my Lucian while Lucian is trying to punish Set early on. While Set can just run at you. Because in lane, left isolated, Lucian's going to get the push. He's going to push him under the tower. You can nice yes, you harass him down. But if Set has someone to play with him, a flash with Set, that instantly stuns a Lucian. That can be a Rek'Sai knockup. That can be a kill. That can take away all of your momentum that you're trying to set up here in draft with this pushing lane. And likewise, I'm looking at the rest of the matchups. Twisted Fate into Silas. Silas has to scale. It should be Bjergsen for the TSM side in this matchup, having some priority too. So I'm thinking this does set up Spica well, even though Rek'Sai into Evelyn. Rek'Sai is a better duelist early on. Evelyn got a lot of power with the cooldown reduction on Q, making her able to dual things, but she would have to kite the Rek'Sai around if Blabber, especially if he went Hail of Blades, would just you could murder her early on. So that's what I'd be looking at with this. And I actually remember this game because Broken Blade does get ganked by the Rek'Sai.
Okay.
So here's the thing. Level 1, Spica goes in, and this is super popular with AP junglers right now that have the AoE. Lilia, Evelynn, both good examples. You invade enemy raptors. So they go in, they invade the enemy raptors. Then TSM ward that raptor brush, so you know for sure, and they see Blabber go up to his top side blue quadrant. That is up by your Lucian set lane matchup. So you have to be like, okay, we know he's up here. We know this is a possibility for Broken Blade. And Spica even goes from that Raptor invade, crossing over to his red side so that he knows the Rek'Sai won't get into his jungle, his red side, and then be able to get behind Broken Blade and gank him with a red buff. Even with Spica defensively warding behind his red, him crossing to get red to red for this invade without even taking away the Cloud9 one, because the information is more important than even stealing away that buff. Even with that, Broken Blade is up at the tower, and after the 3 blue side camps, level 3 Rek'Sai, sure enough, flash set, and they force Broken Blade, into this long run for first blood down into their own territory, and they do get first blood, which is a scenario from the jungle perspective where you're like, we controlled so many variables. We counter jungled, we warded both sides, we know the quadrant he's in. We controlled so many variables for this Rek'Sai. But he's up by this pushing matchup, and he does get the flash gank off, and so it's kind of a facepalm moment, but they still are able to control, obviously.
So when you lose that top lane, so when your top laner dies in that first blood, that kind of makes it harder to play that, hey, we're going to get the top laner far ahead and just ignore the first couple of dragons. Does that kind of force a team to okay, maybe we start trying to control the early couple drakes then?
So the thing about this one too is that because the enemy bottom lane is Ezreal, TSM did a good job of this, of getting multiple pressure lanes and multiple pushing lanes. And yes, it does index their overall composition a bit more early game. But since they don't have to just rely on that, they do have Twisted Fate from mid, and they're still able to pressure. And you have to stay on that same game plan if your comp is going to have a lot of this focus. So Doublelift and Biofrost actually had multiple games where they were pushing in on him and able to get the shove as well. If I'm opening up all these games because I actually like this. We never really go super deep on early jungle paths.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do each game because, like you said on the dive, I was like, this is so cool where they have rookie, not rookie, because technically he played in 2019 for TSM a little bit, but he's the youngest player in the LCS. You have the youngest player in the LCS playing 4 very different junglers. Game 1, Graves into Kindred. Pulling this one up. This one was the level 1 face check where Speak actually dashes over into the mid lane brush, and they chase him off. And Graves, Kindred, they can both just farm, but Graves is able to use, again, Bjergsen advantage here with Twisted Fate versus Galio pushing in. He double scuttle crabs Blabber's Kindred, and double scuttling a Kindred is even more powerful because you're denying the first mark. And again, that was with the same Lucian into top lane set matchup. So that one's pushing. Bottom side is the Senna Rakan into the Ezreal, again, trying to push down there. So they're able to control both of these scuttle crabs. Game number 2, this is the one. Spica actually has so few options because Cloud9 have the Graves, and they ward on their red side. They invade red, but Spica jumps over the back of Baron Pit to steal away Cloud9's red and gets off this really unlikely, behind top lane gank where Broken Blade again flash with Shen taunt. Spica gets in there with the Lee Sin, they get another kill. So that's another bonus for him. Game 3 was the one we just talked about with the Evelynn Rek'Sai. In game 4, Game 4 is their response to the Evelyn steal away,
Yeah.
where Blabber steals away the Evelyn. They counter his Raptors, and basically Spica, even though as his bottom side is coming up again, and he knows Blabber's got my Raptor timing because it was counter jungled, he goes for the second gank onto Licorice's Wukong, and that's like that is such a big, devastating hole for Cloud9 to try and climb out of, because Broken Blade got the first recall kill onto Licorice, and Spica goes back up there, even knowing that he could be sacrificing his bottom jungle. So um, I really liked the jungle review focus that we that we went super deep onto early routes.
Yeah, I mean, it was just interesting just to look at and see, just from a macro standpoint, like how some of these early jungle routes, and that's kind of the Ning thing, kind of got me thinking about how the early route kind of dictates a lot of the thing, or a lot of the styles, or there's a huge snowball effect and all that's not always obvious, right? Like a good gank at level 3 might mean you can secure dragon in 4 minutes, but that's not always an obvious thing to see. With the teams going into this weekend, I think I'm kind of curious from you. We've talked a lot about the stylistic differences between TS. Like I think it's always been partitioned as Liquid and Fly being the same, and then TSM kind of being a little bit like on the other end of the spectrum in terms of how they approach the game. Is that kind of tied? So when we talk about styles like that, is that kind of tied to the early dragon control, or like what do we mean when we say that they're kind of different in style here?
I think that I think a lot of it has to do with how the players see and want to play the game. Um, So I would say, and I liked your basketball analogies that you had put in here too,
Yeah.
with the different defenses, because we have Team Liquid on one side. Everybody knows that style, and I would say Team Liquid is the zone defense of these styles.
Yeah.
They usually, despite their experimentation in the last series versus FlyQuest, will try and play impact on tanky frontline stuff, Jensen on backline carries, rather than the Akali style thing, and have more scaling, more defense. And then TSM, what they showed most recently, with their super offensive, multiple winning lanes trying to push style, that's some isolation right there, because you're like, all right, we're going to draft you into an advantage over a 1v1 and try and isolate all of these advantages so that you can get the most out of them. And that can be punished because, once you get to a 5-on-5, you're not going to have a big beefy front line to fight behind. But because you have Lucian top up there, you can get this extra pressure. Um, and then FlyQuest is really interesting because, to me, they are a middle ground where I know a lot of people were like, they're like a worse Team Liquid where they also scale, but they don't really have the same parts. I think the biggest difference is that they make a lot of aggressive plays still. They don't fully index into all, oh yeah, we need to have winning matchup here, here, and here, and isolate all these. But if we get outscaled, then we're screwed. They do have a decent amount in a lot of their drafts, strong matchups, as well as outs for later, so you don't get outscaled. And the big difference maker for me is Santorin for this team, because he is so active early on and so good at playing to whichever strength they have drafted for themselves.
Yeah.
He, like we were talking about earlier, he has highest kills and assists pre 15. It's a lot of action done, and FlyQuest have done a lot of those prepared level ones to set him up and set the team up for a good early game where they can have these aggressive looks and snowball different areas. Plus the fact that Ignar roams a lot and creates a
Yeah.
lot of plays too. It's not just like a Santorin thing. Ignar gets away from lane quite a lot.
So looking at the matchup this weekend, I think the thing going for me was I expect TSM, again, like you said, to pick winning lanes. They're gonna want like lots of skirmishes earlier, and basically, if you see a high paced, lots of fighting kind of game early on, that probably favors the TSM tempo. And if you see a really slow, hey, there's only 2 kills at 25 minutes kind of game, that probably favors Liquid, where they're just looking to get to end game and team fight, right? Like that kind of seems like two styles we're looking for here.
I like this, and I also know that it's just natural for humans to want to categorize things
Yeah.
and make things simple and have a label on them. And the cool thing to me about the Cloud9 series with TSM is at the end of it, Cloud9 tries to steal away these options. They're like, all right, we're stealing away the Evelynn and the Lucian for a solo lane Lucian, aggressive pick. Like, we're going to have an aggressive lane and an assassin jungler. And TSM are like, we've been waiting for this all the like, we've fully prepared. And they go, Zillion Skarner, which is not a winning lane.
Yeah.
Zillion has like Zillion's not getting pressure on any lanes, right? And especially not a Lucian.
Yeah.
So, but they're like, all right, now we are showing that we are not just this one hive mind. We have to play with this full, pushing full force. If we get outscaled, we're screwed type of thing. They're like, okay, we are going to draft now into your weaknesses. And we're like, yeah, we're going to speed up this Skarner. It's a point and click assassin denial, one of the most hated things here, with a Zillion to try and deny assassination kills as well. So that to me was seemed really cool, and I always want to see when the teams have multiple answers in a best of 5, when we can have some variation like this and you do get changes in the picks and bans. So with that one being successful for TSM, on the Team Liquid side, theirs not being as successful, where they're like, all right, we're running a dive comp, Akali, Shen, Hecarim, and then, okay, we're running this poke comp with AP Cog mid, Zyra bottom, and they were unsuccessful in executing those strategies, though they showed, hey, we at least have practiced enough to want to try it on stage.
Yeah.
And they are looking at being versatile in the strategies that they bring to the table. Your confidence in them pulling those off might have been shaken, especially for the dive comp. I would say that some of the mistakes, and even the one I called out on the dive, where I'm like, oh, they Shen ulted the wrong person. How often does impact Shen ult the wrong person? I feel like that's a mistake they'll clean up. So I'm not sure how close they are to really having success with that flexibility.
Yeah, I think it's good for them to try it though. Like, it's one of these things where it's like you're at the point where even if you lose against TSM, you still go to Worlds, and you do have to play through the play-in phase. But I feel like if you're Team Liquid and you're worried about being knocked out of the play-in stage, you probably got a lot bigger concerns. It's one of those things where I think you just have to be ready to go.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Which team would you be most confident in playing through the play-in stage? Because,
Liquid for sure.
Yeah, but because you assume, you're like, okay, they'll just try and stonewall. They'll try and do scaling top, and they'll have a Jensen on Azir or Oriana, a range carry, and do the scaling. Yeah, I think most people would agree and answer with that.
You just scale to end game. It's the same thing for like teamfight tactics. For example, when I'm playing, when I'm smurfing through, I don't try to spike early. I just figure if I get to end game, I'm just better than this person. And I'm gonna win.
All right, fast 8, whatever.
And I'm sure you've had this for any game you've played, where you're like, if you feel like you're better than somebody, the longer the game goes, the more likely they are to make up mistakes. Just by nature of you being better over a long period of time, you're gonna win, right? So I would be shocked if Liquid lost in the play-in stage, but I have said I would be shocked about a lot of things, the split, including Cloud9 not making it to Worlds. So but there's the Worlds thing. I wanted to touch on one final point after. So make sure you keep an eye on Drake Control in this weekend. I think it's a really cool thing, cool my macro thing. But the last thing I want to touch on was Solo made a comment this week, and he says, it would be incredible if we won, but funnily enough, now that I think about it, I think the perception of NA will be worse if we win the LCS finals. And so that was the quote that was pulled onto Reddit. It was kind of the big thing. He later goes on to say, hopefully people sees an opportunity to have new blood at the NA World Championship, which is something I kind of want to push back a little bit. But I thought it was an interesting quote. And my immediate reaction was, I agree. That's
so, and the truth that his statement comes from is, and then he also goes on to further explain it, is that yes, so many people over years of watching league get attached to the good players that are performing, and those players build up fan bases, those
Yeah.
teams build up fan bases. And so Team Liquid, Cloud9, TSM, these teams have, lots of confidence, because of previous successes, and people can have known to come to rely on players like Bjergsen, players like Jensen, players like Doublelift, who have performed well, a lot of times. And so they have big fan bases. And then when you get to this and you have an upset, you question, are the teams that we have had perform well previously, are these players that we know are good getting worse, or is FlyQuest getting better? And a
Yeah.
lot of times the fans are so pissed that their team is losing that they're like, shit, we're getting worse. It's our fault. Um, and that's where a lot of analysis comes in, is you have to dissect, because it is very often, like most things in life, grayscale, and there's some getting worse. There is a lot of the rest of the field getting better. I think that FlyQuest have been playing amazingly.
Yeah.
Each and every player, we've gone on different rants about them and their different little niche in the team. And I think it is really cool that they're having this much success in parallel to their brand success,
Yeah.
which has been one of the probably the most successful for one of the newer orgs that joined. So when FlyQuest first joined, obviously, um, no real attachment to the brand for any of the fans for a long time. They got kind of memed on, but really big rebranding when they brought on Megumi.
Yeah. No, it's been a really incredible year for Fly. I just wanted to highlight that because I think personally, and there was another Reddit thread that popped up. It was like where somebody was like, "I'm excited to see NA go to Worlds," and I just kind of looked at them and I just have to nod because I too am excited to see NA go to Worlds. And it's one of those things where I feel like you'll get people who kind of meme on you and mock you all the time, but for me, it's like, look, if you're not excited for your region to go to Worlds, and why do you even watch, right? Like every year is a new opportunity for us to kind of wash away all the crap and all the memes. It's like, because otherwise we go through a year of like, haha, NA sucks, NA sucks, NA sucks. But Worlds is a chance for us to kind of fight back on that, right? And I think I'm personally excited to see it
Yeah.
happen. Like, we don't make fun of BR or Turkey for being excited for their teams to go to Worlds. So,
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about being underdogs, and we have suffered some defeats. We have suffered quite a few defeats at so many turns that, I mean, going to Worlds, I look forward to it, of like, are we finally going to be able to, like, say something back? Are we gonna get our big moment? It is an exciting thing. But you do kind of have to have that mentality of like, yes, okay, we are coming in as underdogs. Like, even though I love pointing to our super hype moments of success recently, like the Cloud9 2018 Worlds. That Worlds was a game changer for multiple regions. It caused this tectonic level shift in LCK gameplay, um, and EU and NA as well, and then MSI for Team Liquid beating IG. That's another big, like, huge moment. It does make the moments when we break through sweeter, because we are underdogs and we get trash talk all the time. So it's kind of whatever your taste is. Like, are you a Patriots fan or what?
No, feel you on that one for sure. This, as I always say, this is our year, and if I'm wrong, then I will say it again next year.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely gets super hard for me. Some years where I just get beaten down. Some years I'm legitimately super excited, and I'm like, they are really underestimating X team, and then it has either always come out that I was wrong, or that our team that was legitimately good and legitimately, like, beating a bunch of these other teams in scrims, and the other teams are asking for extra practice time and stuff like that. have failed on stage. And so nobody cares what all these other reasons are behind the door. And the results are the results. And you're just like, you got to eat it.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, we've definitely been unlucky. Like, there's definitely a couple of those TSM teams that I still think were good enough to go far, and they just kind of choked.
And see, that's the thing though, because you can't really say anything when people will come back at you and be like, "Oh yeah, well, how come they didn't prove it?" And you're just like, "Yeah,
it's like lol,
right.
script
Did
TSM.
they choke, or was it just, man, you had some good scrims? Scrims actually mean nothing. Plenty of teams have had great scrims. Hopefully that will be true for Damwon coming this year, because they're again getting the mega scrim hype where it's like, oh, they're just gonna run over everything. It's not even gonna be close.
Well, we're getting close. It's exciting times, but we still got one final to go. And the one thing I will say for any NA doubters, it's that scene in Avengers where Thanos says, "Fine, I'll do it myself." This year, Thanos is Jat. He had enough casting NA losing. He said he'll do it himself. We got insiders on the teams this year for us.
Yeah, this year is one of the years where I'm remaining more cautious than some of the previous years. I mentioned like before, there are some years where I was like super hyped and I was like, we are gonna show them. And it didn't happen. And some, there's always varying levels each year. This year, I'm more reserved than usual. So maybe that means we will get the bigger surprise. That's what I'm going to hope for.
We got a few weeks here to drum up your hype. I'm sure as we get closer, you'll trick yourself into believing.
Yeah, I always remember 2016 MSI for CLG. 2018 Cloud9, 2019 Team Liquid. So
we're gonna have some like nice teases come out, and then you're just gonna be like, wait a second, maybe we can win this. That's how we get you. It's coming up.
Yeah, but until we do, like, we're getting a celebration.
I think that's it for us this week, though.
Yeah.
So, thanks for, bringing this back. It's been a good LCS split. We got big final coming up, lots of tailgating and stuff going on all week. So make sure you check all that stuff out.
And we'll see you this weekend. Tune in on Saturday and Sunday. Games are going to be hyped.